I'm at the Winston Lake Museum. This is one of my favorite places in transport in general. And you can see they have a very large scale model of 611, which if you've ever been to the Transportation Museum, this happens to be G scale. For Transportation Museum in North Carolina, at the Spencer Shops, this is where it was restored before heading back up here. Some complained it was at our museum for a little too long. An old N&W. And another great large scale model. I'm going to take a quick walk through here. You'll see some of the interesting artifacts. And now we're going to head downstairs. What I really like at the museum, first off, there's a very large caboose. It's called Winston's caboose because Winston Link, this was one of the favorites of his. And also, when you're here, you can literally stand here trackside and get a great view of all the different trains that come through Roanoke, which is a large number. You can see a bunch out here. Some parked, some part of the Transportation Museum. And you got the Talbot Museum of Art, and it's just an excellent area. This is a Class S1 switching locomotive with crew taken by Winston Link, and it is a signed, ginormous print. It's, I'd say, about half life-size scale, maybe 3/4. It's a fantastic panorama. Sometimes the electricity fails. Another great setup shot, Vesuvius, Virginia. And this is the actual gas pump that was in the photo. This is one of my favorite shots because I think the weird thing for me is that Winston Link lived in New York City. That's not weird in itself, but his photography took him all the way south, a number of hours by train or car to make these shots. But this was on East 34th, so right near the photo district, 58 East 34th. And some of the lights that he built, calculating the time it would take to run across the wires and actually trip the next lights. So it's just an incredible amount of technology that he figured out, and things that Winston Link figured out in lighting, period, that we take for granted today. But without him, I think we'd probably still be about 20 or 30 years behind. This is Ghost Trains, and I have a copy of it. What's interesting is it has a vinyl in it, a 45 RPM, I believe, if memory serves, could be a 33, with sounds of each of the trains and some incredible photography. Pretty rare. I'll tell you, it's this was made in 1983, the Chrysler Museum of Art here, and he wrote the descriptions, Winston Link did. So it's just an incredible book if you're into photography or into trains or both. And here's one of these shots, the Ghost Train number 83 westbound over Bridge 5 in Norfolk, Virginia. And what you can see is these are long exposures with just a quick snap. So you get the ghosting, and then the second is reset and you double expose basically. So you get a clear frame because you have this long exposure combined with a quick flash, and it created this ghost train. It's a very cool effect. I'm sorry seeing a little reflection in there. We live in a world of text today, and instant gratification, instant notification. Emails are secondary speed. But back in the day, Winston Link would reach out to a place like the Salvation Army, Bluefield, West Virginia, at Camp Joy, because they had a swimming pool, and he wanted to take a shot of steam locomotives. So he had to get permission, obviously, from the Salvation Army, who controlled that camp, or I should say run the camp, pardon that, and to produce some of his most notable works. You see a couple of the shots, but eventually you see all these kids, who some of them probably are in their 70s, I'm guessing, 80s, 90s, and hopefully still on Earth, in the shot with the locomotive. So imagine having to have all these kids swim at night and take all this and then capture that amazing. Probably his most famous shot is shot eastbound, where you can see the plane on the screen, the cars that it's driving, and the train going by. But the amount of work that went into this, the planning, this is basically handwritten notes of where to place the lights, how much output to use, what distance away, how to trigger, and where the locations might be. And this was one of the shots that didn't quite make it. But again, one of the early test shots, or not test shots, but one of the early shots. And all this came with, again, letters, not email, writing to the manager of the movie theater, a response back, and then confirmation, and request for a ladder about 6 feet high. Just, you know, you can't even imagine like trying to put a shot together like this. So for me, this is part of the excitement when I come here. Some graphic view 4x5s, and with copal shutters on them, Polaroid lens, yes, that Polaroid. And you used to make tests made by Graflex out of Rochester, New York. This one had a Kodak Supermatic number 2. It had an aperture f4.7 and as small as f32. You also controlled your shutter speed, basically from 1/25 of a second up to 400, unless that is the what was called ASA, which was now called ISO. But again, these were the tools of the trade then, and I have many friends, some still alive, some who've passed, who cut their teeth on these as press photographers, portrait photographers, and otherwise. And this is what they looked like from the back. They had these, I wouldn't call them waist level viewfinders, but they were shielded viewfinders, and you'd put the film in, you'd take a look at what the image was to set it ahead of time. Once you put that plate in, though, to make the capture, it's done. You're not seeing it until you hit that shutter. So this was a Winston Lang's wet darkroom. This was a Chromega, which was a color enlarger. Of course, you could certainly use it to make black and white prints, and what was beautiful, because it had color filters in it for balance, that would actually help you in the printing process. If you know anything about photographic printing in black and white or in color, using filters or negatives, or rather using filters in front of your negatives or chrome in the case of a slide, you're actually able to change the contrast, tonality, and what gets picked up and what doesn't get picked up in an image. So being that he was a photo scientist on top of everything else he did, besides being a fantastic photographer, great at lighting, he also knew how to make a print in the darkroom. Something that those of us who've had the pleasure and passion of doing. It's incredible to see something like this and see a master's workshop like this. This is another section of the museum I absolutely adore, because it has this reel-to-reel tape sonic set up, so you can actually record audio, whether he was doing a motion picture, which he did on occasion, but we obviously know him more for his stills, but at the same time he was capturing the audio as well as producing and working with some of these great light manufacturers, and at times just designing the equipment. Again, things that we take for granted now, that flash on your camera, whether it's a phone or a portable or an SLR, whatever it is. This is a lot of the technology that got us to today. He was diligent about taking notes about where he was going to place lights, about how he was going to trip them, and also who he'd been in contact with, for what purposes, copies of his letters, just an incredible library of documentation that led to making these shots. So you may have heard of ASMR. One of the things that was pretty incredible, as I showed you before, Link would record audio of the trains going by, and he would create these 33 RPM, 33 1/3 RPM LPs, long playing records, full of all the recordings, and people would listen at home. It's amazing. Now you can just go click on YouTube and see one of my videos and just listen to it, or anybody out there. But this was a whole process, and that's an acetate of and some of the original audio tapes. Again, you saw the reel to reel. Looks like it was about a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch reel to reel, just based on what I could see there.